Okay, greetings everybody. Tonight I want to go over a little quick thing that I think will be helpful just to kind of wrap up this section of the course where we're talking about colorization. So let me see if I can share my screen here. Okay, so you should see my screen. I'm going to open up Photoshop here. Okay, so one of the things that I noticed about some of these retouches is they looked really good. However, there were some areas where I think there could have been a little bit more work done, and especially in the areas where you're colorizing something that's white. And I want to first dispel the myth that white is just the absence of color. Okay, white is not the absence of color. If you take, for example, an image like this car is what we would consider white, correct? So let's do this. We're going to copy this layer, and I'm going to use the quick select tool to just make a selection of the car. I'm using Shift to add to the selection, and then Option to take away. Okay. And then I'll add the door here. You can click and drag, and that will add pieces. And again, if you hit Option, you can bring it back. All right, so it looks like now I have the car selected. So is this white? The question is this white? Well, watch what happens when I put on an adjustment layer on this. Now, what I'm going to do here with this is I'm going to, you see, we only have the car selected. I'm going to create a clipping mat, or I'm going to create an adjustment layer here, and I'm going to take out the saturation. Now you'll notice that it's taking out the saturation from everything. And what I can do here, since I already did this clipping mask, is I can copy this to this new layer, and it's just making this layer black and white. And if I go ahead and click that off, you can see the difference here. Now, I've taken out all of the color from the car. And what you'll notice is, even though it is pure white, something about it looks a little maybe unnatural. And reason being is because nothing is pure white. The car has a glossy finish. It is white, so it's going to reflect the environment. This kind of looks like, it looks like everything else is in color, and then this is in black and white. So let me include in here, I don't know why it didn't include in the mask here, but I'll paint in this part also of the car, and you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And technically all of these areas, or at least the body of the car, is white. But when I add the layer back in, you can see that it is not completely white. There's actually some blue, a blue cast here, because it's reflecting the environment. So when you're working on colorization, that's something that you always want to keep in mind. Let me see if I can bring up another example here. This is something that we're going to talk about a little bit later when we talk about retouching. So to brighten and whiten teeth, the technique is very similar to how you would do colorization. So in this case, we will create a new layer, and we will just paint white onto that layer. I'm just kind of doing this really quick just for this example here. And I probably should change my brush here to something softer. As a matter of fact, I think what I'm going to do, the easier method would be to just paint with white and use a layer mask here. So I'm painting in with white. What I want to do is I want to make these teeth white. And to make teeth white, to whiten teeth, it's actually 2 steps. Now, the faster way of doing this would be to just use your quick select tool. But this image, I can see I'm going to have some problems with that tool. So I'm just going to paint this in just really quickly. Okay, you'll notice that I've painted white on top. I have no layer mode selected yet. Those teeth sure are white. As a matter of fact, they're so white they have no detail in them at all. So what I can do here is drop this down to color. You know this process, and you can see right away, what does it do? Well, because I'm painting with white, it's taking out the color completely, right? And you can see there's a lot of areas here I missed because it's not very precise, but you get the point. Now, again, white is not just the absence of color, okay? Part of white is perceptual. So when you're thinking of, you know, a white wedding dress, for example, is it truly white? Well, it's not if you're photographing someone on the beach at sunset. That dress is like a warm white, maybe even close to a gold. So you always want to factor that in. And when I do this, yes, it does whiten the teeth, but you'll notice it also kind of deadens the teeth. There's not a lot of life in here. So what I always do when I'm going through this process, it doesn't look like these teeth need to be brightened. So I'm not going to do that. That's typically the second part of this. I would add basically a levels adjustment. Well, I can just do it here. I'll add a levels adjustment layer and just brighten the teeth up a little bit. And I can copy this mask over and you can see the result there, okay? So one layer takes the yellow out and then the other one brightens. One layer whitens, one layer brightens. Now, this, if I take that out, you can see that, yes, there is no color in here, but it starts to look very dead. It doesn't look very realistic. So what you always want to do with this is you want to bring back some of that color. You need to give white something, some kind of color. So I'm going to just bring back this just a little bit to bring back some of the, hey there, Julie. I am recording a session here, so you haven't missed anything. You can watch the beginning of this after the fact.
I apologize. Social Security office called me at 6 o'clock on the dot. I'm like,
that's all right. So again, yes, this is going to be recorded and I'll post it to Canvas so you can see it later on.
okay.
But so what I'm talking about here is when you're colorizing an image, this is very similar to the process that we will use later on when we're retouching faces and whitening and brightening teeth. It's the same process. So here we're painting with white. We're using a color mode and it's taking the white, or it's taking the yellow out of the teeth. This is the original. So this is the before and after. And in order to achieve a realistic look, you need to bring back some of that color. You don't, whenever you're working on colorizing something that's white, you don't want it to be a gray white. You want it to have some kind of color in there for it to look natural. So the way I do that with the teeth is I'll drop the opacity back down. I'm going to bring back a little bit of that, some of that yellow. It still looks white. You see it's at 83%. We've got some of that yellow coming back in. And I can also, this is the brighten layer. It's just a levels adjustment layer. I can drop that down a little bit so it's not unnatural looking. And you can see it makes quite a bit of difference. And because I bring back some of that yellow, it doesn't look fake.
So you did like a color
Yeah,
layer?
I did. So I did a color layer just like we did
Mm-hmm.
for project one. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's to take the yellow out of the teeth, and then a levels adjustment layer to brighten the teeth. So we brighten with this, and we whiten with this. And always, the same with when you're colorizing. Something I noticed in a lot of these project ones, uh, that you guys would do, you do a layer and you would leave it at 100%. It's always a good idea to kind of dial it back a little bit, and that way you're not only are you kind of bringing back the original, but you're also creating a little bit more of a randomization. You're bringing back in just a little bit more randomization into the image, rather than just a blanket of color. You're bringing back some of the original. The same thing with here. We're dropping this opacity down so that we can see the layer beneath it, and it just makes a world of difference when you do that. So whenever you're doing these retouches, do it at 100% and then dial it back at the very end. These small details really make a big difference. And you can see the before and after here. Okay. So,
So I
yeah,
feel like on most of mine, like I dialed all of them back, but I feel like it was too much sometimes. Um, Especially on the picture of the little girl. Like
yeah.
that, I feel like it's how do you know where to bring it back to without it still looking black and white?
There's no hard rule. It's trial and error. And, you know, I've done maybe hundreds, maybe thousands of these kinds of images. You just get an eye for it after a while. And some of it's personal preference. Um, how realistic do you want it to look? Well, if it's realistic, if you're doing skin tones, for example, skin doesn't have a ton of saturation. So that's something, if you're doing the skin tones and the final result is something that is super saturated like this, you obviously want to dial that back, and you can do that with the opacity. So I kind of, the way I work, I use, I'll go with an adjustment layer and create a color that I want, a skin tone, let's say, and it's sort of a combination between the opacity, dialing the opacity back, and dialing in the saturation of the color itself, which you can also do. So coming back to the project one, here we have an example of a colorization. Fantastic, looks great, except for this one area. And this, again, this is what I'm talking about. You'll notice that this, and I believe that the reason for doing this was to create something that was gray or white. And that is true. If you take the color out of this, or if you just don't paint anything at all, what's going to carry through is the grayscale, original grayscale image below, right? So here you can see the student here had obviously created several adjustment layers here and left this open. So what I did was I came back in here and I added an additional layer to just give it something. You don't want it to be a pure white or pure gray. In the natural world, you don't have any pure whites, you don't have any pure grays. Things are affected by lighting. Again, going back to the example of the white dress on the beach at sunset, it's not a pure white, it's like a warm white. And so that's what I've done here. I've added just like a little bit of warmth with this image, and it's really subtle. It's really subtle. I have a really terrible selection here, so don't look at that, but just look at the difference here between these two. It's still gray, but it's got just a little bit of color in it. And that's what you want. You'd never want to leave, when you're colorizing something, even if it's supposed to be white or have no color at all, you do want to add some kind of color in, and it will just make it look more natural. Now, let me show you how I did this here. I just created a copy of the image. Again, there's multiple ways of doing this, but just a quick example here. I copied the image and I went up here into filter and camera raw filter. There's like 1,000 ways of doing this. I just used camera raw filter because it was quick. So basically, with this, I used this to warm up the image. And I did that by changing the color temperature. So I gave it just a little more than I needed. And I click OK. And then from here, I can create an adjustment layer and dial it back. So I'll do that. I'll just create a mask there, and then I can just paint back in this area. Okay. So I painted that back in, and you'll notice it's got a lot of color right now, right? That's fine, because we can dial that back in. So I went in here, I painted anything that was gray, I went back and painted it. And then at the very end, I took the opacity. Well, first of all, I changed it to a color mode. And then I took the opacity and just dialed it back just a little bit. And it just gives it something. You can see that it's colorized in some way, and it's not just grayscale. So any questions?
I also felt like I was using soft light a lot. Is that just preference, or?
So you're talking about the soft light mode?
Mm-hmm.
So color is where you want to start out, but color is not the end all be all. So for example, with this image, I thought it looked better using multiply because I thought that this was a little bright, and I know that multiply is going to add some contrast and darken a little bit. So for me, you know, I thought it just gave a richer result to use that as opposed to color. So, you know, at the end of the day, you should use what layer mode looks the best. You just got to keep in mind that if you're using something other than color, when you get into these, you are adding in additional things. So this group right here is going to darken the image. This group of blend modes is going to lighten the image. This is going to create kind of a blend, some additional contrast. These groups are just kind of impractical. I don't use these a whole lot, not aesthetically at least. So they're going to affect the color just like color mode, but they're also going to either darken or lighten the image or add contrast. So whichever one looks the best, that's what you should go with. Okay. Questions about that?
No.
All righty. So the last thing, this is a really quick Zoom session tonight because I do want to give you guys time to start to look at your peer reviews. So Project 1 peer reviews, what you need to do is you need to post the, let's bring this up here. If you go into your assignments, project one peer review. So within this peer review, and this should be within your to-do list, you need to provide the original photo, the black and white, and then the colorization file. So you need to upload those, and then from there, you will be assigned to another peer or a few other peers. I believe it's 3. And you're going to be filling out these questions, critiquing their work. Okay. This is the rubric here, how this will be graded. And that, I believe that's due on Friday. I might be wrong, or possibly Sunday. But
Yeah, I uploaded all of mine
did
today
you?
right before class, and I've actually already downloaded all of my peer files that I was assigned and looked at them, and I'm just letting them like stew so that I can go in and do the rubric and um, make sure that I meet all of the requirements for that.
So did it automatically? So you were automatically assigned other peers?
No, I received emails in my Valencia email,
Okay.
and I got, I know one of them, the last name is Vo. I don't remember the other two's last name, but I received 3 emails of who I was assigned.
Okay. And you're certain it's for this class, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Um, so yeah, that's going to be the focus of this week, making sure that those peer reviews get done. Julie, did you have any questions about project one or any?
Um, I had a hard time with the hair
Mhm.
on my scanned photo. And I told you in my comments that I just copy and pasted the original hair
Okay.
and kind of messed around with the opacity because I could not get a good mix with the hair and the skin. It I felt like it was leaving a line between the skin and the hair, and I played around with it. I used brushes. Um, it just didn't look natural. It
So you're
still
talking
doesn't look natural in my
talking
opinion.
about where the skin meets the hair, that
Yeah,
hairline?
because her the in the photo, the hairline is almost like translucent because her hair was so white blonde right there on her forehead. So
Hmm.
it doesn't pick up in the scan really well. And it doesn't pick up when I adjusted it either.
Hmm. So that's always a tricky area, those transitions, and sometimes you'll spend more time on those little details than 90% of the colorization. Um, but it's I think it's just a matter of maybe finding a transitional color, um, adding an additional layer, finding a color that's in between the two, and kind of using that as a transition, and smoothing that out. So really, that's what you're trying to do, is you're trying to smooth it out, trying to create a smooth
Yeah.
transition. Yeah. So I do have one other thing here. So for this week, you should be focused on. We're starting a new project. This is project 2. Project 2. Let's come back here to the modules. Hey, Julie, I think I hear your TV back there.
Sorry.
It's all right. Okay, so so this week we should be on module 5. We're talking about screen captures. Um, we have a Slack assignment. I did create a tutorial on how to take screenshots with your Mac. It's very important that you know how to do that, as well as on other devices. Um, I created a video also of how to set up this file for painting. Um, and if you don't already, you should know the concept of trim and bleed. If you don't, that's here. Um, but you know, for this week, the focus is this project 2, which is a comic book cover design. And what you want to start to do is start to do your outline. And that's something that I've done here. I took a scene from Kill Bill, and with this outline, you want to be using a separate layer, of course, and using a hard paintbrush, a small paintbrush, maybe something like between 3 and 6 pixels. And make sure that you have, when you do this, you have smoothing off and flow and opacity at 100%. And you, as you're doing these outlines, you want to make sure that they connect. So, because what you're going to do is go back in here and paint these in. And if there's any areas that are not fully connected, it will bleed outside of the area that you want to add color to. So there is, I believe in this week or next week, I think it's next week, there's also an exercise, painting the Mona, where you're going to be doing something similar to this, where you're going to be selecting an area um, and then painting in a color. Let's see if I can find a skin tone here that might work. So again, the reason that this works here is because I have my outline closed in. So any questions about this?
No.
Okay. So another way of doing this, whoops, is you can do it this way if you're on the layer. I don't recommend doing it this way because we're working destructively, and now this is permanently applied to the layer. This is with the paintbrush or the paint bucket tool. The better method would be to do a selection and then apply that to another layer instead. So this one, we'll rename this the hair and then add that in there. Okay. But this is next week, adding in color for this week. You want to pick out the movie, television show, or movie scene that is going to be the basis for the artwork, and then create an outline of it. So that's all I got for you guys. Julie, you got any other questions for me?
None off the top of my head. I think I'm good.
Alrighty. All right. Well, I should have project 1 graded hopefully tonight. I should have everybody's project 1. And you know, if you have any questions about that, send them my way. And other than that, that's all I got for you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. Have a good night.
Bye. You too.